Hello and welcome to CrossTalk. I'm Peter Lavelle. The shuttle for proximity. Indirect talks between the Israelis and Palestinians have begun with the goal to find a peace settlement after decades of conflict. What makes this round of talks different from the past? And is a viable Palestinian state even possible today? To discuss the possibility of a two-state solution, I'm joined by Norman Finkelstein in New York. He's a political scientist and author of a new book, This Time We Went Too Far, The Truth and Consequences of the Gaza Invasion, published by Or Books. And Benny Morris in Beit Shemesh, he's a professor at Ben-Gurion University and the author of One State, Two States, Resolving the Israel-Palestine Conflict, published by Yale University Press, and another member of our Crosstalk team, Yelena Hunger. All right, gentlemen, Crosstalk rules in effect. That means you can jump in anytime you like. Benny, I'd like to go to you first. In Israel, you're widely regarded, maybe the best historian of the Israel-Palestine conflict. How do you believe, what is at the root of this conflict? And what's one step we can go towards resolving it?
Well, at the root of the conflict, in terms of the Arabs, is the fact that the Zionists, Jews, began to settle, to return from Europe and to settle in Palestine, or the land of Israel as they called it, at the end of the 19th century and during the first half of the 20th century. The Arabs didn't want the Jews to be here. They didn't want them to establish a state here. They didn't want to share the land with them, either in a binational state or in a two-state solution. And they resisted the Zionists, and this is the root of the conflict from the Arab side.
Okay, Norman, if I can go to you, is that your interpretation as well?
Well, I'm more inclined to agree with what Professor Morris has written in the past. So if you open up his book, his standard history of the conflict, Righteous Victims, he says that it was, and now I'm quoting him, the fear of territorial displacement and dispossession, which was the chief motor of Arab resistance to Zionism. In a word, it was the fear that they were going, the Palestinians, their fear that they were going to be dispossessed and displaced from their homeland. And then Mr. Morris went on to say in another one of his important books, he said that the idea of transfer or expulsion of the indigenous population, what we nowadays call ethnic cleansing, he said that idea was inbuilt and inevitable in Zionism. Those are his words, because he said there was no other way to turn an area which was overwhelmingly Arab into an area which was a Jewish state. And he said this transfer idea, which was inevitable and inbuilt in Zionism, he said that automatically produced resistance from the indigenous population, from the Arab population. The resistance of the Arabs to Zionism, with its inbuilt idea of expelling the indigenous population, was no different than the resistance of Native Americans in North America to the Euro-American desire to create. All
right, Norman, I think you made your point. Let Benny reply to that. Go ahead.
I think Dr. Finkelstein is, of course, right in quoting me, because I do actually know something about the history, but I think he's selectively quoting. I would say certainly that the Arabs in Palestine, from a certain point on, did fear some form of displacement, and in fact the change of the country in character from an Arab-Muslim territory into a at least partially Jewish territory. But this still doesn't undermine what I said before. The Arabs did not want the Jews to come here, and they resisted them, and they objected to a partition of the land between the two peoples into two states. This has been a consistent Palestinian position, that no part of Palestine should be given to the Jews as sovereign territory. 5%, 10%, 15%, 50%, none of it should belong to the Jews as a sovereign territory for the Jews. The Palestinians should have it all.
Okay, Norman, do you want to reply to that, or are we going to move on?
I would just say briefly two things. Number one, Professor Morris devotes quite a lot of space in his books to documenting the idea of what he called transfer. It wasn't an issue of living with the Jews. It was an issue of the Jews expelling the indigenous population from the area of Palestine where Jews intended to create a Jewish state. So there wasn't an issue here of coexistence. It was an issue of expulsion. As to whether or not the Arabs or the Palestinian Arabs have acquiesced in the idea of a two-state settlement of the conflict, I think we'll probably get to that later when we discuss solutions. Right now, I think we're looking at the history, and I'm simply quoting what Dr. Morris not only wrote, but extensively documented.
Okay, Benny, go ahead. Go ahead, Benny.
Okay, Doctor, just one sentence. I think Dr. Finkelstein is fixated on the problem of transfer and expulsion and doesn't see the wider picture. That is one element, but it's only one element in the big picture.
All right, let's speed up to the present here. We did some history here.
Except there was,
all right, Norman. Go ahead, Norman. Make your point.
Except there was Dr. Morris who repeatedly said that the Zionist movement looked at transfer, and now I'm quoting him, as the chief means for resolving the problem with the Arabs. So if he calls it the chief means,
this is simply untrue.
It seems to me we should focus on it.
You cannot attribute
Dr. Morris, I know your
views
books
which are not
quite well.
mine. You have, but you haven't understood them apparently.
Dr. Morris, I know your books quite well. You wrote
quite well isn't good enough. You have to know them very well.
Dr. Morris, you really shouldn't deny what's already in print.
I'm not denying anything. I'm saying
deny what's already in
transfer. No, you're distorting you are distorting. You are distorting what I've said.
Dr. Morris,
transfer was an element in Zionist thinking.
Anyone can turn.
I think the moderator has to. No. You can't have.
All right, gentlemen.
What I wrote, I know what I wrote.
Let's move forward. We did some history. Let's talk about the present. If I go to you, Benny, there have been people that are saying that Obama himself, because of the impasse in what's been called the peace process, which I haven't seen any evidence really of, that Obama may try to impose something himself. If he were to do something like that, what do you think would be fair?
Well, I've always thought, since the year 2000, that the Clinton parameters, which the previous President Clinton published in December 2000, represent a fair, just solution to the conflict. In other words, a two-state solution with the Palestinians essentially getting the West Bank and the